त्यसपछि 8औं शताब्दीमा आएर अहिलेको बङ्गलादेशको सोमपुर भन्ने ठाउँमा सोमपुरी भनी महाविहार थियो, नालन्दा जस्तै।
Then next, in the 8th century, a Mahavihar, or great monastic institution of learning, called Sompuri, was established in Sompur, which lies in the present-day Bangladesh. It was a Mahavihar, like Nalanda, and was established by King Dharmapal of the Pal dynasty. The kings of the Pal dynasty were followers of Buddhadharma, specifically of Vajrayana. The Pal dynasty reigned from the 8th to the 11th century, but then they were destroyed by the Muslims with the help of the Sen kings. And after they defeated the Pals, the Muslims also destroyed the Sompuri Mahavihar. The Pal kings then fled to Gaur and Assam after their defeat. It was only after that is after the 10th century, that Kamarup Kamakhya in Assam became a Buddhist power spot. It was not regarded as a Buddhist power spot before that. It was a Kirati power spot originally. And it also became a Hindu power spot during the reign of Hindu kings. It was after the Pal kings established their second reign in Assam that Kamarup Kamakhya became a Buddhist power spot. Here in Nepal, we hear stories about Saswat Vajra, Bandhudatta Acharya, and Narendra Dev having visited Kamarup Kamakhya. However, the time periods do not add up, as during the specific century that they are said to have visited there, that is in the century they were from, it was not a Buddhist power spot then. At that time though, the present-day Bangladesh and other parts of Bengal were part of the Pal kingdom. And like how Sompuri was situated there in Bangladesh, there would have been numerous power spots situated there as well for sure. And these Newar Vajracharya gurus might have visited these other power spots in Bengal rather than the Kamarup Kamakhya in Assam. Since the related records have now been lost, the writers who came later just made an assumption and wrote that they went to Kamarup Kamakhya. Atisha also resided and taught at Sompuri Mahavihar. Atisha is referred to as Jowo Atisha in Tibetan. The word Jowo means Prabhu in Nepali or Lord in English. He was also the one who inaugurated Stam Vihar in Tamil here. He came here to Kathmandu and stayed in Stam Vihar and inaugurated it. He also ordained the eldest son of the reigning Thakuri king of that time into monkhood and took him along with him to Tibet, and then brought him back here after some years.
जसलाई अहिले भगवान बाल भन्छ त अतिशा सोमपुरमा अध्ययन गर्नुभएको हो.
The Stam Vihar is now known as Bhagwan Bahal. So Atisha studied as well as taught in Sompuri Mahavihar. And it is said that during the destruction of Sompuri Mahavihar, Karunashri Mitra, who was a great scholar, was also killed, and many monks were killed. These incidents were written about by Karunashri Mitra's own descendant from a few centuries later, and they are also detailed in the Tibetan text Paksam Jonsang, since many Tibetans also went to Sompuri to study like they went to Nalanda. And this has also been mentioned in the history of Buddhism in India by Taranath. Although the name Taranath is a Sanskrit name, he was in fact Tibetan. Now regarding who destroyed the Mahavihar, it is said to have been destroyed by the Bengal army. The name used in the text is Bangladesh, which refers to Bengal. Thus many great scholars were also killed in the destruction of Sompuri. Then after that, in 1148 CE, came the Chalukya Empire of South India, which had spread up to Maharashtra. They had an inscription which can still be found today, which says that for the Buddhists and Jains, Mahamandaleshwar Virupasara is equivalent to a wild forest fire. This inscription still exists, and what we can infer from it is that this person, Virupasara, killed thousands of Buddhists and destroyed stupas and also destroyed Jain temples. Then after this period, the Islamic invasion began. And in 1193 CE, Bhaktiyar Khilji destroyed Nalanda. I have already talked about this in earlier episodes, but I am repeating it here again because every Buddhist needs to have a clear understanding of this history. The majority of Nepalis in the Himalayan region, including the Tamang, Gurung, Magar, Manang and Mustang communities, follow the Nyingma tradition. The Nyingma tradition was established by Guru Padmasambhava, who had studied at Nalanda. Thus all Nepali Buddhists should be aware of its history. And later on, many others also went to Nalanda to study, such as Guru Marpa, who went to Nalanda to meet his Guru Naropa, who was a Kashmiri Brahmin and was teaching there. So Bhaktiyar Khilji attacked Nalanda. And why did he attack? It is said by many that the Muslims believed that the Mahavihars, with all the monks dressed the same, were army camps. There is also another story regarding this. It is said that Bhaktiyar Khilji fell ill and got so sick that his own Hakim or physician could not help him. Then a monk from Nalanda, who was knowledgeable in Ayurveda, offered to cure him. Now, Ayurveda does not automatically mean it is related to the Vedic tradition. In fact, even Bhagavan Buddha had his own physician, Jivak, whose Ayurvedic lineage continues to this day in Thailand. Thus, Ayurveda is not necessarily related only to the Vedas. Bhagavan Buddha was a Shraman, and so Jivak was a Vaidya or physician of the Shraman tradition. Vaidya meaning someone who heals by practicing Bhaishajya or therapeutic knowledge. So this monk from Nalanda went to Khilji and offered to cure him. Khilji initially hesitated, as Muslims generally avoid eating food, etc. given by a kafir or non-Muslim, and he was suspicious about the monk's intentions.
तब त्यो भिक्षुले भने ठीक छ तपाईको कुरान जे ग्रन्थ छ तपाईले बिहान बेलुका पाठ गर्नुहुने त्यो दिनुहोस् म त्यसै औषधिमा लेप हाल्दिन्छु र हरेक चोटी पाना पल्टाउँदाखेरि त्यो पढ्दाखेरि त्यो चाट्नुहोस्.
The monk, therefore, to reassure him, said that he would apply the medicine to the pages of Khilji's Quran and asked Khilji to lick the pages while turning them as he read the text. Khilji agreed, and as he did this, he started getting well. Khilji then thought that if their knowledge of medicine was so much greater than his own physicians, then they must be very advanced and powerful in other areas of knowledge as well, including the knowledge of weaponry, in which they must be very advanced. And so he reasoned that they had to be destroyed. So there is this story which says that he destroyed Nalanda for this reason. There is also a third story which says that it was actually a Vedic Brahmin who went to cure Khilji. When he was asked what his fee would be, the Brahmin said that he would ask for it once Khilji was cured. Then once that happened, the story states that he asked Khilji to destroy Nalanda. So there are these three stories, but whatever the story may be, Nalanda was destroyed by Bhaktiyar Khilji. The story of the destruction of Nalanda, as recorded by the Iranian historian Minhaj-i-Siraj in Tabakat-i-Nasiri, relates that thousands of monks were beheaded and thousands were burned alive. And this is written in Bhaktiyar Khilji's own diary as well. His diary also includes descriptions of the library there, about a 4-storied building situated on one side which contained a grand library. This library contained all the Shastras, Sutras and Tantras. It even included the Vedas and Hindu texts because Buddhists study the Hindu scriptures as well. And why do they do so? In order to understand what the incorrect view is. And all these texts, which were said to number 90 lakhs or 9 million, were taken out and burnt. When such a vast quantity of books are burnt, the piles of paper would remain burning red for some time. We can estimate the extent of the loss based on the fact that in this case, those red embers took 6 months to die down, and the smoke remained for 9 months. This is how they destroyed Nalanda. Sompuri had already been destroyed a bit earlier than Nalanda, and Vikramashil, Odantapuri, Jagadalla, Vallabhi, and Vikramapur were also similarly destroyed. And because I have already talked about Shankaracharya and Kumaril Bhatta extensively in previous episodes, I did not mention it earlier. But since it is relevant to this question, I will repeat it here again. Earlier, in the 8th century, Shankaracharya and Kumaril Bhatta also contributed to the decline of Buddhadharma. There are around 11 or 12 biographies on Shankaracharya, but the earliest one by Anand Giri has already been lost. That was already lost during the British rule, and only the name remained. The second oldest, which is also considered to be an early one, is Shankar Digvijay by Madhav Vidyaranya. This biography states that both Shankaracharya and Kumaril Bhatta killed Buddhists and destroyed Buddhist stupas. The first canto, verses 93 to 95, of the Shankar Digvijay relates how Kumaril Bhatta took King Sudhanva's army and killed all the Buddhists in Kerala, regardless of whether they were children or elderly, and destroyed all the stupas and vihars or converted them into Hindu temples. These incidents are clearly related in that book, and as we read further, we can find them justifying these actions using the reasoning that non-Vedics should be killed because Parshuram had given the instructions to do so. Then, Shankaracharya in his turn also took the same army of the same King Sudhanva and went from Ketu, which is Rameshwaram and which has the bridge referred to in the Ramayana. So he went from Ketu to the Himalayas. Now, why would Sudhanva have given his army to Shankaracharya if it was not to kill Jains and Buddhists? Sudhanva himself had given an edict to his army to kill all Buddhists from Ketu to the Himalayas, regardless of whether they were children or the elderly, and that he would kill those who would not obey his command. Sudhanva had given such a command to his army and to his subjects. Some people say that Shankaracharya went around debating, taking this army along with him. But can this really be called debating? What kind of debate would this be? How would it be a debate if it had to be won through coercion, by taking along, for example, bouncers or sten guns and such?
त यो स्पष्ट हो कि उहाँले धेरै बौद्धहरूलाई मार्यो, धेरै बिहारलाई ध्वस्त गर्यो। तर पनि ठुलो ठुलो नालन्दा आदिमा त्यही बौद्ध राजाहरू पनि थिए, गाडहरू पनि थिए, त्यहाँ जानु सकेन।
Thus it is clear that what he did was to kill many Buddhists and destroy many Buddhist vihars. But he could not go to large institutions like Nalanda, which was supported by kings and also had their own security. He could not challenge the scholars there, and there is no indication that he actually debated with Buddhists, only that he killed them. If he had really debated with Buddhists, then the scholars of Nalanda, Vikramashil, etc. would have also challenged him to debates. But there is no record of this. So I have given this point in brief here, as I have already elaborated it in earlier episodes. Now going back to the Islamic invasion, it was this that ultimately destroyed Buddhadharma. It was the reason that Buddhadharma got weaker and declined in the Indian subcontinent. And although I have named the Islamic invasion as being the cause, I want to clarify that it is not the fault of the present-day Muslims, nor of the Muslims of Nepal. However, this is a historical fact. It happened. It is recorded in Bakhtiyar Khilji's own diary, and Siraj, the Iranian historian, has also written about this. And it is essential that Buddhists understand this history. Hindus should also become acquainted with this history because they are not aware of why Buddhadharma was lost in the Indian subcontinent. Now the Muslims also killed Jains and also killed Hindus. However, Jains did not have large centers such as the Mahavihars. Some of their places were destroyed and some Jains were killed, but they did not have centralized institutions. Plus, Jain Dharma was not as widespread as Buddha Dharma was then. And that is also why the Hindu Brahmins had greater anger towards the Buddhists. While the earlier Brahmins were in search of the truth, later on, once the Purans started being written, they became a faith-only based orthodoxy, blindly accepting whatever was written in their texts. And thus they grew hostile towards Buddhists. They started despising Buddhists. These various kings like Sudanva also fall into this category. After reading these texts, they were greatly influenced by them and aligned themselves to those ideas wholeheartedly. And Shankaracharya's slogan itself was that the Vedas are correct, no matter what. That it was not necessary to analyze them because they are correct, and whatever is written in the Vedas is the truth. Once such attitudes started growing in the Indian subcontinent, Buddha Dharma also started facing difficulties. Because Buddha Dharma is based on logic, analysis, and experience, where one decides for one's own self whether to accept something or not through one's thorough analysis. It is not based on blindly believing something just because it was believed by one's forefathers. This is stated in Bhagavan Buddha's own words in the Kalam Sutta, which is also called the Kesamutti Sutta. There, he clearly says that one should not accept something merely because he has said so, or because it was passed down through a lineage, or because scholars have said so. The Buddha said, analyze it for yourself and see for yourself whether it is true in your personal experience or not. It is because of this practice that Buddha Dharma spread so far and wide. Vedic Brahmins also became Buddhists in large numbers, which indicates that these earlier Vedic Brahmins were not so orthodox. The later Vedic Brahmins and the Hindu Brahmins detested these Buddhist Brahmins the most and were intent on destroying them. Because the Buddhist Brahmins were very intelligent, and they wrote books and various pieces and would refute the Hindu Brahmins. That is why they particularly detested the Buddhist Brahmins. This does not, however, mean that only Brahmins were Buddhists. Buddha Dharma does not have any caste distinctions anyway, and people from all castes were Buddhists, including the scholars. For example, Atisha was from the Kshatriya caste, and Naropa's Guru Tilopa was of the Tiliya caste. Tiliyas were considered to be untouchables. So Naropa was a Brahmin, but he still had a guru who was a Tiliya. And it is his lineage that Guru Marpa took back with him to Tibet and established as the Kajipa lineage, which is still alive and thriving.
यसपछि हाम्रो नेपालमा बौद्ध धर्म कसरी कमजोर भयो? यसमा यो प्रश्नमा अलिकति बुझ्नुपर्छ कि नेपालमा भन्दाखेरि यहाँ काठमाडौँ उपत्यकामा भन्नु खोजेको हो.
Next, let's look at why Buddha Dharma declined in Nepal. Here we should understand that when we say Nepal, it specifically refers to the Kathmandu Valley, because Buddha Dharma continued to exist in the Himalayan region of Nepal. This is because of the close proximity of the Himalayan region to Tibet. Buddha Dharma reached and got established there on its way to Tibet, long before it disappeared from South Asia, before even the Islamic invasion. So even after the destruction of Nalanda, Vikramashil, etc., it took about 500 years more for Buddha Dharma to be completely forgotten in South Asia. We can infer how prevalent Buddha Dharma had been in South Asia from the fact that there were still people who claimed to be Buddhists for 500 years more after the destruction, even in the absence of Shastras and Sutras and masters to teach. The records of these Buddhists have now been lost, and Indians assume that the Indian subcontinent only ever had Vedic Brahmins, and that Indians were always Hindu in the past. The Brahmins of Nepal too make such assumptions. But actually, the ancestors of many Nepali Brahmins of today were Buddhists. How do we know this? Because of who their Kul Devata or family god is. For example, Vajrayogini. She is a Buddhist deity, specifically a Vajrayan deity. She is not a Hindu deity. So how can Hindu Brahmins have Vajrayogini as their family deity? Similarly, there are many other Buddhist deities who are considered to be their family god by Hindu Brahmins. So what was it that happened in Nepal? In Nepal as well, similar persecutions were being enacted. Let's look at the Lichavi period. Who were the Lichavis? The Lichavis of Vaishali had become Buddhist during the time of the Buddha himself. The Lichavis bore various losses in their kingdom of origin, and some branches of that clan came up to Nepal. Thus, the Lichavis were already Buddhists when they came to Nepal. Now, Buddhist kings in general always maintained respect towards Hindus and also supported and became patrons of Hindus as well. This is because the Buddha himself had said that one should make offerings to both Shramans and Brahmins. And when we say Brahmins here, it does not refer to the type of Brahmins we have today. The Buddha was referring to those Brahmins who practiced meditation and asceticism, recited the Vedas, made fire offerings, that is yagya and havan, and maintained pure ethics and conduct. Thus these Lichavi kings were patrons of Buddhadharma, but also provided support to Hindu Dharma. Then next came the reign of the Thakuri dynasty. They were pure Buddhists. Nepalis today may find it strange to hear that Thakuri kings were once Buddhists, but the fact is that Kathmandu Valley was once ruled by Thakuri kings who were pure Buddhists. This was around the 8th and 9th centuries. The Thakuri king Raghav Dev established the dynasty in 869 CE. There were Thakuri kings who ruled before him as well, but the Thakuri dynasty itself had not been fully established before this. It was established on 20th October 869 CE, which is also when the Newar Sambat or calendar year was established, which continues to this day. This calendar is also called Nepal Sambat or Nepa Sambat. The Thakuri reign ended in 1201 CE when Ari Malla married the daughter of the last Thakuri king who did not have a son, and thus he became the first Malla king. Thus they ruled for around 300 to 400 years. They were pure Buddhist kings, and it was during this time that most of the vihars and sub-branches of these vihars were established in the Kathmandu Valley. And many people from India came to the Kathmandu Valley to study, and many from here went to India to learn as well. Tibetans would come here to study, and the gurus here would send them to India, to Nalanda, to study with their own gurus there. And Marpa and Guru Padmasambhav were also from on or about the same period. Guru Padmasambhav came a bit earlier, but a Thakuri king was ruling at the time of his visit as well, although the Thakuri dynasty had not been established then. Atisha's visit was also during the time of a Thakuri king. It is said that at that time, Parping was a large Buddhist site, and it was for this reason that 2 disciples of Naropa, including Vagishvar Kirti, came and stayed in Parping. In one of the stories included in the Swayambhu Puran, which is a chronicle of the great stupa of Swayambhu, it states that Vagishvar Kirti met with Shanti Karacharya. But let's not get into that story now. Then later in 1201 CE, the Malla reign began with Ari Malla. The Malla kings originally came from Mithila, and it is because of this that they brought Brahmins from Mithila to Kathmandu even later on in their reign and made them Newars. Thus the Hindu Newar Brahmins, such as the Raj Upadhyayas, etc., originated from Mithila. The Mallas themselves are kings of the Karnat dynasty of Mithila. The Sen dynasty is also related to the Karnat dynasty. That is, the same Sen kings who aided the Muslims in their destruction of the Pal dynasty. The Pal kings were Vajrayana Buddhists who were patrons of Nalanda as well. Both the Sen kings and the Pal kings were very powerful. Had they joined forces, the Muslims would not have been able to enter Bengal. But the Sen kings instead negotiated with the Muslims, allowing them to take a route in the south of their kingdom without interference, by which they could enter Bengal and invade the Pal kingdom. And the Muslim army entered that way and destroyed the Pal dynasty. But in the end, after establishing their rule in Bengal, the same Muslims also destroyed the Sens. And it is the descendants of these Hindu Sen kings who became the Karnat dynasty. Thus the Karnat dynasty is not from Karnataka as is often said, but they are actually from Mithila.